So today's talk is going to be about the question, how climate justice and racial justice are interlinked. Our guest of honor, Magid Magid, the former member of European Parliament, the former mayor of Sheffield, the author of the book, The Art of Disruption, and the founder and director of the POC-led organization called Union of Justice. As you can see, the list of things Magid has done is already very long, and I can't wait to get to know more insights and to start the conversation. If you, the viewers, have any questions to me or to Magid during this conversation, you can use the Insta Live question and answers tool, so it will be easier for me to select the questions, and we have time at the end to discuss them. The Instagram channel we are on is called Post-Migrant Europe, and it provides a digital exchange platform on the realities of post-migrant life on a European level. By presenting migrant diasporic associations and organizations, exchanging with scientists, cultural workers, activists, and journalists, aims at enabling understanding of the complexities of post-migrant, post-colonial, and racism-sensitive societies and the unjust ideologies that exist in them, not only on a national but also on a European level. This channel gets its fund by the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung. My name is Sada Abdullah, and my pronouns are she, her, or they, them. And I'm a climate justice activist and a social justice activist from Germany. And over the last 1 and 2 years, I'm trying to decolonize the white-dominated climate in Germany. And 2 weeks ago, actually, I organized and hosted the first German BLQC climate justice conference near one of the dirtiest coal pits of Europe. And we had like the strong urge to organize a safer space for BIPOC activists to be able to develop our own standpoints that are otherwise marginalized. And I hope we're going to touch on that later. My other topic is also organizing around solidarity for refugees living in northern France and being targeted by racist police violence. That is something that I'm also doing. So Magid, it is very exciting to meet you. Thanks for joining this Insta Live.
No, thank you so much for having me. And it's amazing to see all the incredible work that you've been doing in Germany, which of course is truly incredible. So thank you very much for everything that you've been doing as well.
Thanks. If you want, you can like properly introduce yourselves again for the viewers, and please let us know.
No, that's fine. So so it's I guess it's always like what comes first when you introduce yourself. You put what you're most passionate about first. You introduce yourself with what you do, spend most of your time doing. But I guess at heart, I'm just somebody that cares. I care about people. I care about planets. And I always say, like, I am who I am because somebody loved me, like somebody cared for me. People really put a lot of love into me, and that kind of just translates in everything that I kind of care about and doing. So that translates into activism, wanting to change the betterment of my family, friends, community, the world, and as it is. And I guess one of the things that kind of really unites, a cause that really unites, whether that be in Sheffield, whether that be in Bonn, whether that be in Uganda, whatever it is the climate crisis. And that's something I've been focused on a lot of work and as well, and anti-racism work as well. And I guess through that I've used different mediums, whether that be a community organizer, whether that be elected politician on a local level, as well as on a European level. So I will leverage any position or any influence I can, basically, to bring about change in my community and elsewhere, kind of thing. So yeah, so I currently at the moment head up an organization called Union of Justice, and where we look at the intersection of climate and race, and as well just I also do some work with refugees. I'm chair of a charity in Sheffield called City of Sanctuary. So yeah, so I guess that's a very, very brief nutshell. Of course, you've been through it, and in terms of like some of the posts I've kind of held previously and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess like many of the people joining us today, I'm somebody that really just wants to do the best I can to try and make our community and lives a better place.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would love to hear more about like the journey on the different levels of the institutions. Like you did mention the grassroots level and the more institutionalized. And where did you start, and how did you develop your political approach?
Yeah, great question. So I guess the first thing I ever remember campaigning on or just getting involved in was at university. I studied aquatic zoology at university, and it's interesting, I never ended up doing anything with that, with what I studied, but I came from a sports background, realistically, and I came from wanting to campaign for better sports provision at university, and then that led me to campaigning for free education, and safety on campus, and then one thing led to another. And when I moved back to my city in Sheffield, my home city, I was campaigning to save the local library from closing, because as we know, local library is so much more than a place where you just borrow books. And then that kind of led me to get elected, stand to be a councillor, represent my local community, and campaigning issues like housing rights, air pollution. We even had a school in my city in Sheffield that had to be closed down due to air pollution, kind of thing. And in Sheffield, it contributes to 500 early deaths every year, and it's really, really awful. So then I was like, well, no, this is just one aspect of the climate crisis that's really hemorrhaging a lot of people. So it was that, and then that led me to kind of put myself forward as Lord Mayor of my city, and then we had the European elections, and then so one thing kind of led to another. Basically, I never really ever had a burning passion to be a politician, or really, it was just something that for me, I was gonna take myself out of my comfort zone, but also try to leverage as much power and change that I can, basically, but also uplifting people, because for me it's really important in everything that I've done is just supporting other people. I've got this kind of quote where I say God gave us two hands, one while we're climbing, one to climb with, and the other one to lift people up as we're climbing, because so it's whether that be activists, whether that be organization, whatever it is, I always try to share my space, or just encourage other people, even mentor people, which I've done for several years. So yeah, it's just yeah, and I guess politics is everything. It affects everything that we do, basically. Even though some people don't like to talk about politics or get involved in politics, and you can argue the people that, I guess it may be a lack of, they don't know how it affects their lives, or it could be the extreme end of they don't want to change anything because the status quo serves their purpose and they don't want anything to change. So it's just trying to figure out, but it's, yeah, there's a lot that we can do. And Liam the Terrible, sorry, I'm just reading a comment. Where you been? Sorry, going back to you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So could you narrow down one driving cause, or was it just that you were doing this, or did you have a moment where you were yeah, I need to get politically active, or how did it start?
Yeah, so okay, politically active was when I joined the Green Party, literally just to save the local library from closing. That was, I guess, the initial impulse in terms of party politics, in what we'd consider mainstream politics, and that was the first thing that kind of really led me into it, kind of thing. But it was only then when I became a councillor and I was seeing how air pollution was having a negative effect, and then of course then everybody was starting to I'm sure there were loads of people who were already involved in environmentalism and kind of climate and justice work, but then it was seeing, I'll be honest with you, I come from a country called Somalia, which I was born in, but also even having conversations with my mum, who was telling me how droughts are really terrible now in Somalia, and that's linked to climate and to the climate crisis, and then linking that what was happening into the country where I was born, and those conversations with my mum and how that was directly linked to our experiences in Sheffield, kind of really metamorphosized everything. And then it was a case of, well, no, we need to do something. And it's I know it's so cliche, but we've just got one planet, and we see what's happening, and it's not like we don't know the solutions or we don't know the devastating effects. It's we know what's happening, we know the answers, we know the solutions, but it's just at times, well, it's the political will to do things, but it's also there's different forces against us. So there's a lot that kind of needs to be done. So yeah, it's just, that was again, I guess, the impulse. And it was well, and also I'll be honest with the experiences that I had, especially when I was working in the European Parliament and working with different colleagues from different parts of Europe. What was interesting is climate justice in Germany looks very different to climate justice in Sweden. So everyone, but it's all under the same umbrella. People got the same threads, themes that they all kind of share. but we were all having the same problem, especially when you look at those people who are mostly directly and had a negative and impact by it, which were mainly those BIPOC communities, which also at the same time weren't even represented, but also just didn't have a voice in it, which I kind of thought was really, really tough, because if we're serious about tackling the climate crisis, we have to put the people who are at the forefront of that crisis at the heart of the conversation. So it was, yeah, just literally through speaking with different people, I was like, well, how can we do this? And then myself and so many other amazing people, which were a mix of artists, like researchers and elected representatives from across Europe, the basic were like, well, no, let's kind of do something about it. And then that led me to where I am now, kind of thing.
And could you maybe for the viewers explain the concept of climate justice again and what you specifically mean by it? Because I think it is used, as you mentioned, in very different contexts and different terms. So if you want, you can maybe share your vision of climate justice and what a climate just world would look like, maybe.
Yeah, great question. So I guess it's the most interesting. The definition of climate justice really came about a lot when we were discussing in terms of like the COP26, and what do we want from it, kind of. Yes, we want certain things that we're calling for, but climate justice is, from my perspective, is that the people who are least and those who are least kind of contributed to the climate crisis shouldn't have to face the consequences of the least kind of that actually have paid and that did the most damage to it. But also it's, then you kind of talk about, well, what should happen? Well, as well as kind of just making sure that those kind of devastating impacts are kind of also reparations come into that conversation, and kind of, well, then also education comes into that as well. But it's also kind of just realizing that, yes, it's just so much more than environmentalism, because when people think of climate, they just think of environmentalism. They might think of the rainforest, or we need to, like, all the trees are on fire, we need to save the rainforest, or all these. Well, okay, no, we get it, but also the people and also heavily impacted them. They kind of also fail to connect to, for example, climate refugees. But I guess, yeah, it's just the kind of intersection of everything, because it's like I said, it's just so much more than just environmentalism. And people find it hard to kind of relate, well, how does like the climate kind of impact refugees? Well, we know by the year 2050, there's going to be over 200 million displaced people who are actually fleeing the homes. And also, just one of the things that kind of grates me a lot is when a lot of people talk about the future a lot, as if like, oh, we need to protect the future for our children. Like, well, no, it's actually happening now. It's not the future, like and you don't have to look far to see what's happening, kind of thing. It's like, it's happening now, basically. There are people who are literally having to flee their homes. And this woman was describing her situation in the South Pacific, and she was saying, what do we take when we have to uproot an entire community? And how do you then introduce them to a completely different other land? So it's just so many things that we're unprepared for. Like there's so many issues that we've got that are happening now that we haven't got the answers to. So it's like and it kind of had this, there was this book that was kind of really talking about the notion of having a ministry for the future. So like, rather than just, I guess, waiting for kind of things that, of course, we want to kind of get rid of fossil fuel extraction and everything like that. It's also, how can we best prepare for some of the realities that are actually going to happen due to the climate crisis? Is even the fact that the term climate refugees isn't even recognized term within the United Nations. That's the big challenge that we're kind of having to undergo. But it's basically just, I guess, all of that kind of really encompasses climate justice. And I think the key word is justice, more so kind of thing, is just that, to make sure those people who are the least to kind of contribute it are basically just are not impacted by it, but also kind of protected at the same time.
But
okay,
thank you
that's good.
For your insight, because I feel like every time I see Fridays for Future activists, I get so mad because they're talking about the future and they're disregarding the communities that are impacted right now, or just, I don't know, bring them to the margins of the conversations, which is, yeah, crazy regarding what is happening already. Could you explain us maybe the role of European colonialism that plays into those narratives of future and the general crisis? Could you hit us maybe on that?
Yeah. Well, I guess even if we kind of look at it from a, if you look at the main kind of climate organizations and the kind of people in like the climate organization, but also that being said, I'll kind of preface by saying there have been so many amazing people and who've basically been doing lots of amazing things, like Greta Thunberg, like Sir David Attenborough kind of thing. But it is only we only hear voices of white people when it's basically when we talk about the climate crisis, when we know the majority of people who are faced under threat of the climate crisis are black and brown BIPOC people in the global south and elsewhere, even within Europe kind of thing. And also even the rhetoric that I hear a lot from, sadly, even though it is changing, from climate organization, but also even politicians and institutions, is this kind of white savior mentality approach when we're talking about the climate crisis, thinking about, oh, this is what we need to kind of, for example, you had Ursula von der Leyen, who kind of came out and said every country is responsible for its own self when tackling the climate crisis, completely negating the decades and years of colonialism, especially within Europe, especially in the former colonies in the global south, of the constant extraction that it did, and therefore saying that we've got we're not going to help you, but also even going as far as saying, well, you countries that you need to kind of completely go through renewable energy, you can't use fossil fuels, this and that. And of course, we don't want to be, nobody wants to be using fossil fuels. But then you'll have countries in the global south saying, well, you guys in the global north have completely pillaged and extracted so much, and after you've kind of abused it, and now we're starting to develop ourselves and saying we can't use any kind of fossil fuels. So I guess it's a difficult one to kind of really kind of get into, but that's where I guess climate reparations kind of come into, and I think there's a really strong case for climate reparations to the global south, and it's something that we've been really discussing leading up to COP26, because Europe as a continent is, and the EU and Europe as a continent has got a big role, and it's played a big role historically. And the thing as well, it's fair enough, say the UK, Germany, we can have the best Green New Deal. Europe can have the best European Green Deal, but it still wouldn't be enough to tackle the climate crisis. That's why it's really important that we have a global perspective and a global approach to it. Otherwise, we're never going to tackle it, kind of thing.
Of course. The people are doing the Union of Justice work. Maybe we can get into the conversation again.
Of course. And thank you very much for your patience, everyone. Greatly and appreciated. So I guess Union of Justice, we're a independent, people of color led organization that's dedicated to the intersection of climate and race. And so in essence, basically, there's three main aims of what we're trying to do. So the first one is to empower people. So what we've been basically doing is we've kind of set up a network of POC activists from across Europe, which is a mix of activists, researchers, and artists, different people. And from there, we've kind of held different workshops. We've kind of got working groups that kind of focus on different projects. And the main project we're focusing on at the moment is climate and reparations campaign leading up to COP26. And with that, later on this year, we're going to be offering leadership training. It's basically just to really empower those at the forefront of the climate crisis. Because one of the things, for example, that I always get requested is, oh, we don't know any POC and climate activists, or there aren't any, which is completely not true. It's either you're not looking hard enough, or you're not looking at the right place, or whatever. And it's also just giving them certain training, like media training. So, for example, when they know how to kind of give interviews. So it's just basically just giving them the skills and the tools that they need to bring about change within their own communities. And then the second aspect of what we do is an influence, where we kind of look at different policy areas, mainly at the moment focusing on the European Green Deal, and looking at how we can center racial justice within the European Green Deal, and how it serves those people at the forefront. So we kind of work with different elected representatives to different groups, basically just looking at policy. At the moment, it is mainly focused on the European Green Deal, but hopefully some people will be able to kind of look at individual member state policies, because I know there's interesting things happening on a member state level across Europe. And then the third one is campaigns, which I guess, and what a lot of people are calling the last chance COP, and in COP26, which is being hosted in the UK, we kind of thought, well, what can Europe as a continent do? What's one action that Europe as a continent do? And we looked at climate reparations, and even I guess climate reparation itself is a very big area, but within that, what's one thing that we're kind of asking for is, and that's basically just a cancellation of debts. If we were to start off with basic cancellation debt of the global south, that in itself would be a massive step towards those countries who are mostly affected by the climate crisis to kind of really start looking at renewable, just looking at different ways of energy, basically. So that's in a nutshell of like in terms of what we're doing. So yeah, so it's just a mix of people. So and then it's myself and a French girl called Hiba who's based in France. And thankfully, like we've got a amazing team of people on our advisory board that kind of really help out, and just different people across Europe. So it's it's in a brief nutshell in terms of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And on the website it says that the Union of Justice is BIPOC led. Can you explain us why you chose only to work with racialized people and which difference it makes for you?
Yeah. For me, it was important, and I guess when I say me, I mean like us, and for us at Unijust, it was important just because it was first and foremost just providing that space where we can look at climate through a racial justice lens, basically, and it's also really just trying to like bring people from those from POC backgrounds at the forefront of the climate crisis, because that is just the main gist of what we're trying to do, especially like when we look at other climate movements and other kind of climate organizations. They've got a real issue with basically either, like I was saying, it's completely like either white centric or it's different. Like they've got an issue in terms of really necessarily just trying to bridge that gap between how those mostly affected are, which are predominantly BIPOC people, how they can get involved in the climate crisis. So for us, it was really important to provide that space, just because it's something that needs, because the climate crisis it's affecting all of us, regardless if you're black, green, blue, whoever you are, kind of thing. But it does disproportionately affect one group of people more than it does others. And if we're serious in tackling it, we have to bring those voices at the forefront of things. So it was important that we provided that space. And of course, like we work with everyone that shares our belief and goals. And so it's not completely exclusive to but it is, like as it says, it is a POC-led kind of initiative.
Nice. And are there other BIPOC climate justice organization in the UK?
There's a host. Mm-hmm. There's a host. Like there's Wretched of the Earth, who do absolutely amazing work in the UK. And the interesting thing is, see, when we think of like groups or organization, we automatically want them to say, are they formal groups? Because there's a host of groups who haven't got a website, who haven't got a constitution, anything like that, but are doing real stuff on the ground kind of thing, which they're the ones we're trying to like give like resources to and kind of really like help kind of capacity building. So there's loads of activity happening within the UK, and of course different parts of Europe. And I'll be honest with you, naturally, I guess with the current things at the moment, it is Western Europe West Europe is, shall we say, more active. And I guess within Western Europe you can say the UK, Germany, France, etc. kind of people. Also, I guess even like there was an interesting report done basically looking at the Roma community and how the climate crisis is really affecting them in Eastern Europe and as well, because they're another racialized group. So with all corners of the East and West, there's lots of activity happening kind of thing. And I guess one of the things that like, and from a European level, we've basically been trying to put at the forefront is like when we're talking about the European Green Deal, because that's something, that's a piece of action, a piece of legislation that we can try and affect, basically, that can hopefully really do amazing things that can affect lots of different countries. But I guess it's within the European Green Deal, there's lots of, she would say, like criticisms, like one of them basically being that the belief that we can achieve supposedly economic growth while at the same time dramatically trying to reduce CO2 emissions, which just isn't possible kind of thing. But also like it's the fact that so many, like if you look at like the kind of the major grants, the entire financial framework of the European Green Deal really excludes so many people kind of thing. To give you an example, they gave a contract to Deloitte, who I think are an accountancy firm, to run part of their climate program in Spain. Like it just feels if like all the research, everything is for the top boys and the kind of top corporations to kind of do. So it feels like it's kind of like an inside club, and so that's like there's so many different kind of groups have been putting forward real alternatives. Like you've got the Green New Deal for Europe initiative that basically putting up and that being putting forward different ways in basically we can tackle climate within the European perspective. So yeah, so there's a lot of like proposals, but the reality as well, it's I'm glad that we've got something. Like it's not perfect, but at the same time, it's it's something that we've got, especially with how time sensitive things are. It's, of course, we want it to be more radical. We need to kind of keep pushing them. That's why we need actors, we need organizations, we need people on the ground, we need as many different people as possible to really push the needle and really kind of demand better kind of thing. And I think like and I think we'll get there. Like, I'm very hopeful. There's lots of reasons to be hopeful, put it that way.
Yeah, if you, I mean, for the viewers, you can write your questions and comments in the chat. But I would really love to hear your thoughts about, like, this more personal question, like how you keep your hope high. Like, I don't know, I feel like if you get to know the complexities of colonialism and the fuck up of the system, it can get so draining. And I would love to know how you keep up your mental health and keep up your hope and stuff. Yeah. If you want to share, I would love to hear that.
Yeah. Do you know, as you said, the more you dig into it, you realize that you're in a system that wasn't even built for people like yourself to actually engage in to begin with. And I'll be honest, there's loads of times like I will get the imposter syndrome and I'll be like, but the thing is, the alternative is too bleak. Like at times it's like, well, yes, like it is hard. Like, it is hard to try and to, like, whether that be trying to get people to listen, trying to like engage with others, or just even mobilizing people. It's hard work, but like I said, what is the alternative? It's like I always really try to remind myself that the problems that we face, the climate crisis, whatever, it was man-made. Like, it didn't just arrive from the heavens. Like, it's a man-made problem. Like, you can argue mainly by men in suits. So the thing is that we can have good decisions. We need good people doing good decisions, basically. So and I think, I don't know, so the more I learn about it, I just feel it's incumbent upon me to do something kind of thing with the kind of God-given talents that I've kind of got. I know people always say, but what can I do? Like I'm just somebody that lives in Bradford or somebody that lives in Turin. What can little old me do to try and do something? But the reality is there is a lot that we can do. Like, I always say, if you're a writer, you can write something. If you happen to be funny, you can make some online funny content. Wherever your God-given talent is, there's something that it is that you can do. Even if it's literally having conversations, like even the power of having conversations with your family, with other people regarding climate, regarding air pollution, whatever it is, that really kind of goes a long way. And I guess in terms of how do I keep myself sane, I'll be honest, I don't do a good job of it at times. And I need to kind of remind myself that, Magid, listen, you need to kind of like make sure you're kind of taking breaks. But it's also like, it's a really important question, because you need to look after yourself to support other people. Like, you can't keep on giving kind of thing. So that's why it's really important to have networks. So like, I'm sure like yourself, and I encourage as many people as possible to really have networks of friends, other kind of campaign groups, activists, that really basically just that you support each other.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I would love to know, like, if you like always had a support system, or did you like go through your journey on your own, or when did you start to collectivize, or are you in a like, did you always do that on your own, or did you have a group of people supporting you? I would love to know.
Without a doubt, like I've always had people supporting me. It's hard work alone doesn't get you as far as you'd like, kind of thing. Like, would that be my mother who made sacrifices, friends who grounded me, people like just support us in general, kind of thing. And at times we create our own networks, kind of thing. I've got different support groups for different things, whether that be friends that I speak to about a specific issue about. But there is also, I am part of like we've got a really active POC and network, like, of basic POC activists in the UK that we basically just use as a safe space, just to not even necessarily organize or mobilize. It's literally just a safe space just to talk about it's kind of thing. So it's like, and I go to different friends for different things, but yeah, I think it's just important. What about yourself?
Actually, I'm just starting to really collectivize. I don't know. I feel like I am since 2 years part of Ende Gelände, and we are doing like civil disobedience and occupying coal pits and stuff. But this is only white people, and I really didn't feel seen and heard, and I really feel marginalized within my own movement. And it's only since I actively reflected my own position in the society, and then actively look for other POC activists that I really found myself in a collective, and having spaces to heal and learn from other people, and being appreciated for bringing up some POC perspectives. So it's nice that you already found, that you also found that bubble that put like a warm blanket over you. I think that's super important.
It's really important. To answer a question, sorry guys, and Pia Pricots. Hi Pia.
Yes, let's get to the question.
She goes, what can exactly be done as soon as debt would be relieved for countries in the global south? And I think, great question. So I guess as well as, so in ideal worlds, when cancellation, like when debt's being cancelled, and I think it'd literally be about, well, how can the global north, Europe or North America, whatever, actually start building projects where they give funds to those countries to build sustainable energy resources. Just basically just exchange of knowledge, exchange of resources, building basically. It's just a case of really just making sure that, yes, we've cancelled it, but that's just not, we can't end things at just saying that, well, honestly, even just the whole debt situation is even problematic kind of thing, how those countries are in debt to begin with, even though they were completely extracted and kind of exploited for donkey's years. But I think once that's, and that'll be a great first step kind of thing. But even if at the COP26 that's something that they agree to, and I think on top of that it would literally be a case of how can we get funds to those countries who are developing, who would naturally turn to fossil fuels, how can we kind of support them into renewable energy, or just it's just looking at ways we can kind of best support them, and just so they are still developing, but also kind of we're giving them something back as well.
Yeah, if you have any other questions, like just write in the chat. I would have actually another question. What strategy do you think would be the best for BIPOC activists? Like, on which level do you really think that change can be happening? I don't know. I feel like always the answer is on every level. But given that the institutions are so colonial, like I've been to the European Parliament for an internship, and I was like, hell, what is this? I mean, you've been through it all. What do you think is the best place to be active? I'll tell
you one thing that doesn't work. That it's just not something that kind of like, it's this whole notion of having black and brown faces in high places. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, we'll always see it in, even just in Europe or different countries, where they'll be like, well, look, we've given this black brown like POC person in this position. Look, we're very diverse. It's complete BS. Like, look, let me give you a British example, right? Our Home Secretary is of Indian descent and called Priti Patel. She is the worst. Like, it's Rishi Sunak, Home Secretary. So it's not just a case of sticking something, saying to, look, we've solved all, we've got no issues and with discrimination. There's no it just doesn't work kind of thing. And I think it's also one thing, like I kind of really realized, I guess from an organization perspective, is it's a lot of the times, a lot of organizations focus on influence. Oh, well, we need to influence this legislation. We need to influence these politicians. But influence alone is not going to do the job, because they can just turn around and say, oh, fantastic, you've written this amazing report for like 100-page, cheers, but look at it, but we're not going to do anything. Like, it's of course, influence is important, but for me, the real power really lies on those people on the ground. Because when it starts really mobilizing, we start kind of doing it on a local level, on a council level, on a national level, and it's starting to kind of like swing elections, and then those people who rely on the votes of people, those on the ground, they can't ignore their constituents for much longer. Then they will be held to account, kind of thing. So I guess from a PLC perspective, I just think it's, first of all, just literally just get together with people. And I appreciate there may not be at times, you may be in a community where there won't be much activity happening with PLC kind of climate, but there's amazing communities online that you can really get behind, or even on a national level kind of thing. If not, we can really point people to what activities are happening across Europe, because we've kind of built a bit of a map where things are kind of happen. So feel free to get in touch with us. But I just think organize it on a local level. What can you do? It's of course vote, do all that sort of stuff, but also just think what you can do on a local level. Like, I guess that's where you'll be able to see some more effects as well. And I think it's like a ripple. It'll have like a ripple effect, which kind of will then hopefully turn into kind of a wave. but it's just, yeah, I just think in terms of like really changes, of course we need to have allies. We need to have allies in European Parliament. We need to have allies in our own governments, in institutions, as many different allies as possible. But at the same time as well, we need to kind of organize and mobilize and amongst ourselves as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have another question coming up. So the question is, how can we make a decolonization part of an effort to establish a more inclusive climate justice movement fighting against climate crisis?
So I think one thing, and there's a lot we can do. Thank you very much. I don't know us go with the red background. Cheers. But I guess first of all, just one thing we can do is really hold into account the climate organizations, basically, and literally making sure that their decision-making processes are involving those communities who are affected. Because a lot of the time you'll see organization, institutions, or even like just policymakers making decisions for people without actually even actually engaging with those people. And I think education plays a big part of it as well, kind of really just educating those who are at the top making policies, and kind of really just those motions to kind of understanding that we need to kind of make sure that we're looking at it from a racial equity point of view kind of thing. So there's a lot that we can do with it basically, but it's just, I guess without having the will, it's really difficult. And I think gone are the days where people even are denying the climate's a real thing, but I think it's just getting them on board to kind of really realize that, well, no, we need to make sure that we're working with, but also decolonizing our own practices. Because the thing is, people don't realize the privilege that they have. They don't realize that their practices are colonial. They just have no idea kind of thing. And if they don't know, how they're going to know the solutions into fixing that. So I guess there's a lot that we can do as PLC activists. There's a lot that we're doing in terms of having conversations, but also just holding those organizations to account that supposedly are speaking or working for. And so yeah, so it's just holding them to account, but also education plays a part in just. So yeah, so there's a lot that we can do.
Yeah, thank you. There's another comment or question in the chat. I'm just going to read it out. It may be off topic. I'm a local council trying to save Epping Forest from environmental effects. Any advice on making further awareness on this matter as they keep building nearby and polluting it? By Sebastian.
Hello, Sebastian. It's terrible. I guess what I would do is the reality that, Sebastian, you're not the only one who cares passionately about that. So honestly, I would literally look who else is doing work on it, or if not, because at times we always assume somebody else is doing the work, or somebody will fix it, like somebody else will kind of sort it out. And it's at times we really have to kind of like take it upon ourselves to really do something. So I would say like just see like what's happening. It may be literally like there might be climate organization or individuals. Honestly, I'm a firm believer of direct action, because sometimes it's like you have to like take non-violent direct action and really put your bodies on it, because yeah, you can take the normal routes of like asking questions, petitions, all that sort of stuff, and of course they've all got a place for that 100%. But at the same time, like we also need to kind of use other tactics which are proven to work, kind of thing. Like it's not like we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, kind of thing. I would literally do like seek out other activists and groups, and whether that be even literally setting up a meeting and with them or just seeing what's happening. But it's like even if you didn't want to get directly involved with other people, you can write about it. There's loads of things that you can do basically. I guess the first thing, what I would do is just look for allies, who else I can kind of like work with on this, because it's really hard to do things by yourself or to get anything done by yourself, and in all honesty. But I'd like to as well, just on that note, allies can come from unlikely places at times. You'd be surprised how many people care about, I don't know if it was like the Woodlands Forest. It can literally be your local football club. It can, because at times we just think to ourselves that not many people be interested in whatever, but you'll be surprised how many people actually do care Fair enough, they may not label themselves as climate activists or climate just or whatever, but they still care because it's directly affecting them, kind of thing. So it's just also kind of reaching out to businesses or whatever kind of thing to really get them on board, because sooner or later they can't and they won't ignore you, kind of thing. So it is just a case of just building away.
Yeah. I don't see any questions in the chat anymore. I would invite you to make one closing statement with maybe telling us what's next or what your vision is after like ticking every box on the political bucket list. What's next? Is it the world revolution?
Global revolution, like we like it. But honestly, it's I don't know. For me, it's in a personal capacity. It's just doing whatever I can. And some days that might be nothing, and some other days that might be doing the absolute most, kind of thing, right? But I think for me, it's just I can never be indifferent about things. But also, it's for me like the more I kind of work, the more I realize how we're all interconnected and how it affects us all, regardless of your age, background, whatever it is, kind of thing. And it's also like it's one of the kind of things we're discussing with one of our colleagues is how like part of our conversation is how do we get people to care? Like it's they may think, oh, it's happening far away, it's not going to affect me, but it is going to affect. But it's so yeah. So there's not like kind of long thing I'm trying to tick off kind of thing. But of course, I am working towards a Europe, a world that is more equitable, just and fair, basically. And that comes with working with anyone and everybody who kind of has and shares that kind of goal. And ultimately, I do believe that a better world is possible and that we will get there. It's just going to be really hard, and basically. So I'm really thankful for people like yourself and for just so many, honestly, amazing people that don't get the shine, that don't get the praise, that literally doing it this day in, day out kind of thing without any acknowledgement or anything like that. And all those kind of like unpraised, kind of like activists and people doing amazing things. I'm amazed and thankful for, basically.
Well, thanks for your words. And I feel like a lot of people got inspiration out of this and are inspired by your work and your legacy. I mean, you're under 40, I guess, and
yeah.
already did the legendary things. It's very inspiring, very impressive, and thanks for sharing your thoughts.
No, it's honestly in the grand scheme. Do you know what? I'll never forget it. Saying, I remember when somebody was like, and somebody said to me, they were like, "Oh man, why are you always too political? You always," it's like, am I the only one that's seen that? Like it's people say like it's if you're not pissed off, you're not looking hard enough. Like you're not looking hard enough, kind of thing. But also in a personal capacity, how can I like? What does it mean to be too political? Like I'm someone like it's in a personal capacity who's black, who's Muslim. It's not even a case of I read about injustices, I witness and I feel injustices, kind of thing. It may be directly myself, but even if it may not directly affect me, it's still kind of thing, and it still exists. And injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And it's just sooner or later we kind of realize that. The more we kind of think, well, no, we kind of really need to really pull up our socks and kind of. And the thing is, it's like we have got the numbers. Like fair enough, they may have the money, but we've got the numbers, we've got the people, we've got everything, kind of thing. But it's just bringing all that together, kind of thing. And I think it's. Like, honestly, like it's who like I'm sure you would have seen that when the ocean was on fire. Like you see the image, like it's you wouldn't believe that. That would have like this is amazing CGI. Like what film is this, kind of thing? But it's like we shouldn't have to wait to see dystopian real life things happening for us to be like shit. We need to actually kind of do something. And I appreciate people are at different levels. People are like different things. Not everybody can put themselves forward to be a politician or whatever. Like I appreciate that kind of thing, but I think indifference is something that we can't allow to kind of fester in itself. So there's something that we can all do, basically. But yeah, and I'm hopeful. I really am hopeful. Every day I'm more hopeful. I'm meeting you as well. I'm more hopeful as well.
No.
And honestly, it'll be good. I'll message you private, but there's loads of things I'd love to kind of like just speak to you about on a private level. But yeah, so it'll be good to kind of connect.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Apologies for like all the kind of technical and issues that we've had as well.
Don't you apologize. It's all good. Like, I'm so happy that we continued the conversation, and I'm so thankful that you took the time to let us into your thoughts and into your perspective. It was a pleasure. It was an honor, and yeah, let us fight the indifference of people together. I'm very motivated by this as well. I would say if there aren't any further questions, we can end this Insta Live and then chat privately. So yeah, everyone who listened, thank you for participating, and I wish you a very pleasant evening.
Lovely, guys. Ciao.
Bye.